Okay, so no public comment or no one that has inquired or emailed, correct? Okay, just double checking. So our only item for action tonight is for the approval of the CARES fund. So I will ask for a motion in a second, and then we will open it up for discussion. Could I get a motion for our first item of action?
So moved. That's Mike Simmons.
Thank you, Mike. And a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay.
Okay, so Jennifer Stewart, second. Thank you. So we can open it up for discussion, and Jeff, I'll probably kick it to you to kind of start or let you figure out where you'd like to start with that.
Thank you, Tyler. So the Finance Committee and the Facilities Joint Committee actually has reviewed these numbers a couple of different times at meetings recently. So I don't know if Mike wanted to also say something before I put some numbers up, or Kevin, or anyone else.
I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I'm just going to share. These are new numbers that I sent to the board over the weekend. Scott and I have been reworking these numbers to fit into the application that needs to be filed, and so these numbers are similar to what the Finance and Facilities Committee had looked at, but just a little bit different. Hopefully, you can see that screen at this point. So, or is receiving, $1,448,743.66 in the CARES allocation. This is the Corona virus relief funds, and these monies are good until December 31st of 20. One of the things that our district did, and I thank Scott for checking in with the state, we have to make sure $1.5 million that we want to make sure that we have predetermined that money is going to be accepted by the state. So it's incredibly important for us to do that. So we did check all of these items on the list. One thing we did find out when we did our pre-check with the state is that monies, initially we were told that monies probably could be encumbered beyond December 31st for any salaries. We were then later given guidance by the person who will be reviewing and approving our application that we cannot encumber monies beyond December 31st. So that did change some numbers in our funds as well. So basically the nursing salaries, 30,000, and the 6,000 for the GMS nurse. Those numbers are slightly smaller than what it actually would cost to fund a nurse or increased hours for the year. And that's because this is only going until December 31st and not through June. So initially we had, I think it was close to 60,000 for the long-term substitute nurse at Mabel Wilson School. And it was double the 6,000, probably around 12, 13,000 for the increase in the nursing hours at the middle school. So we sized that back based on a December 31st non-encumbrance criteria that the state gave us. So COVID building modifications is 150,000. That's pretty much close to what we have expended over the summer in order to retrofit our buildings, bring up our buildings to COVID standards. And so those funds are in there. Initially, we had not put the money in there, and we had moved it to capital. But based on the reduction in salaries, that we had to put in based on the 12/31 deadline, we're able to put more of those building modifications into the COVID funds, which is a very acceptable use of these monies. The next item is network upgrades across the district. Those are fiber upgrades and making sure our bandwidth is in place, really doing a complete network health check, so to speak, across the district, pre-K through 12. In there, we also have equipment and capability to install live streaming at the middle school and high school. So that's included in that $900,000. Dirk Van Kuren is here. He's the technology director, and he has some updated information that we have gotten even in the last 2 or 3 days about live streaming. I think it's better news than what I've been able to tell the facilities and finance committees over the last couple of weeks. We've just been getting some updated information, so I think it will be helpful in looking at this a little bit differently. Additional facilities staff, this is daytime, school year and summer. Again, this number was adjusted downward based on December 31st, not being able to encumber these funds. Now, the state has indicated that the governor will be releasing a second round of CRF funds after 12/31, but we don't know that for sure. We've been told that that will happen, but irregardless, these salary lines cannot be expended beyond that for this round. Same thing with the secretarial salary increases. That's a small amount of money at this point, again, to December 31st. The Mabel Wilson School and GMS, we did not feel had quite the adequate office coverage for the amount of phone calls that we expect to be receiving, given the hybrid model that we're implementing this year. Outdoor learning, we're recommending tonight $100,000 for outdoor learning that can encompass many different projects outside, so we get students outside and learning outside, especially during the fall and spring months. Love to have some outdoor learning in the winter. I love winter myself, and I think students can certainly learn in the winter. They just need to be bundled up and ready for the cold weather. But I'm sure there's some opportunities in that $100,000 to do some winter learning as well. And the final one is long-term substitutes. We did adjust that number down quite a bit, again, based on the December 31st, and hopeful that we get a second round of money that will carry us through to the end of the school year. So we were able to increase our hires from 10 to 15 based on this, and adjust the money downward based on the December 31st. So majority of those 15 long-term substitutes would come from our existing substitute pool that we already have people. So the idea is, even if those care funds don't come through for the rest of the school year for some reason, we would most likely, hopefully, retain all of those people on a daily rate after December 31st, as these are folks that have been working for us as daily subs already. But it gives us an opportunity to have permanent substitutes in our schools that we can count on every day. They're in our district, we know they're going to be there, and we can pay them some extra money to make it worth their while. And so we're anticipating spending $200,000 if approved tonight for long-term substitutes. So that is that's the amount, $1.448 million in CRF funds, and we will be going out, if it's approved tonight, for an RFP on the network upgrades, live streaming, or any item, non-salary item on this list that exceeds policy DJ, which is $35,000 at this point, unless the finance committee waives that. I appreciate the finance committee weighing in on this and saying that it was important for the whole board pretty much to go ahead with the RFP process of any item on this list that was non-salaried. That I agree with that. I think that's the right process that we've used, so we want to make sure we continue with that. So I do want to turn it over to Dirk for a couple minutes and have him talk about some more information about network upgrades and live streaming capability tonight. If Dirk could do that, please.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to go ahead and I'm using some of the equipment that we would use in a video conferencing setup. So let me just go ahead and move the camera. So, Jeff, could you stop presenting?
Yes, yeah, I'll do that.
So if you pin my screen, what this is a camera in the back of the room shooting on a television in the library here at the middle school. So does everybody pin me? Can they see this slide?
I just want to tell you, we can pin it, but the text on your screen is backwards to us.
Okay, let me fix that.
Thank you. Quick, nice work.
Right? Does that look correct now?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, I want to be kind of clear about live streaming versus video conference equipment. Live streaming is our platform. So when we talk about live streaming, we've been live streaming since we went out in March. And that is Google Meet. And we've upgraded that to G Suite Enterprise for Google, which gives us enhanced features of the Google Meet. So regardless of what happens tonight, we have the best platform to present live streaming. That is the Google Meet. They're all doing it. It's K-12, and that is in place as we speak today. Come back here. So because that's been done in the past, what we find is a bandwidth issue that's coming from the state. The state only supplies to us about 1 gigabyte of bandwidth for our whole campus. And we're looking with the network upgrades to look at upgrading the bandwidth that comes from MSLN, which is $1,300 to complete this year. And it's basically $130 a month for that increased bandwidth beyond what they give to us. Well, it's $1 per student, but the increase is minimal. Then the fiber upgrade to carry those extra speeds is $77,558. And this is what they call single mode. And it is the best available today and would set us up for a lot of expansion in the future as things are demanding the bandwidth in the future. And one of those items would be voice over internet. We have I would say, archaic at times telephone system. So we've run out of lines in the analog world. So this would set us up for, in the future, a phone upgrade. The next would be a firewall upgrade for the faster capabilities, and that's $176,000. And then all our access points we have about half our access points can handle the faster bandwidth. The other half would have to be upgraded, and that would be $125,000. So the total network upgrades would be $381,000 of the quotes that I got today. So it was higher than I originally expected for the fiber or for the firewall upgrades, but the fiber came in less. But this would set us up as having the most robust network K-12 for the whole campus, set us up for decades, or at least a decade. I shouldn't predict too much out in the future. So live streaming, we have it. We need the upgraded network to handle the speeds, because when we have 140 teachers on campus trying to do live streaming, it is going to be a tax on this network. And if we don't upgrade the network, we will come to a barrier, and it'll get very frustrating for teachers. So then we move into the video conferencing solution, and that is where the flexibility comes in.
Jared, can I just interrupt you? Can
Yes.
you re-enter your screen? Half of it is cut off. I can only see other way. There you go. Perfect.
There, thank you. Okay, so portable versus fixed. One of the initial, because of the increase in the firewall and the network, I started to look at the portable solution more than the fixed solution, because the fixed solution can run about, as you see on the bottom, $5,400 per classroom, which would really limit the number of classrooms that we could outfit in that $900,000 cap. So with a portable outfit, running about $2,000 with some of the quotes that I've got, though this could be all flexible, the RFP, it makes a lot more sense to me. And the reason I say that is the fixed solution will be a solution that can be used not only for our hybrid model when we're in the school, but also if we go red, this is equipment they'll be able to take home. It'll also be the equipment they take home for a snow day. So if we're going to look at a major expenditure for video conferencing, it should be mobile and give that flexibility of whatever environment that you're going to be in. So with the portable setup, you would do a PTZ camera, and that's what I'm using right now. A microphone, a monitor, so you could see all the students wherever you were at home or in the classroom, all your hubs, cables, and cords, and a carrying case for that equipment. So I'm just going to, that's all I have for slides. What I want to do now is just this PTZ camera. I don't know if you can see that. That's the box of the PTZ camera, but below it is the microphone. And is the sound quality good to you? Does anybody have a problem with sound? Now I'm talking around that box. It's on the other side of me. I wanted to purposely do that because of the barriers. I'm not wearing a face mask today, but that would be one of the things to take into account if we're in the classroom teaching in a hybrid model. So I put some barriers up to that microphone. Then the teacher's teaching and they say, okay, I want the students to focus on me. I can bring the camera right back to me and teach in the room. And then my home setting would give me the opportunity to then zoom right back out and show the whole classroom. So I wanted to give you a little bit of feel of what it would be like as you students at home in a PTZ virtual video conferencing setup of the capabilities of the camera and keeping students engaged. And I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dirk. Whoa. Zoom.
Hello.
I've got a couple questions.
Go ahead.
First of all, so you're saying the network upgrade itself is, I forgot, 350,000?
381.
Okay, so let's say $400,000. So the other 500,000 are these camera kits?
Well, it'd be the camera kits, or if we chose to go the fixed route, and that would be the installation as well in the classrooms. But I would recommend we go to the mobile because of the snow days and going into a red zone.
The next question would be, of that $380,000 for the network, does that include modification of the buildings, installation, and in my opinion, the most important thing, professional supervision of this installation?
Well, the professional installation, if this goes out to RFP, I'm not confident that the people that are chosen are going to be necessarily the ones I want doing it. Systems engineer has been our third party installer, and Connectivity Point have been our installer of fiber. And when they're our backbone, they're the people that watch our network. They're the ones we've bought all our Meraki switches from and our access points. And the numbers you see here are coming from them.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
So are they the ones, I mean, what I am trying to avoid is this security system fiasco where we had, we got into this thing and found building stuff that wasn't right and had to go through change orders and all this thing. And I think what I'm looking for is a total package where we've got this thing supervised so we don't have a Larry and Daryl operation putting this thing in.
I hope not too. And system engineer is the ones, when we did the GCA, we asked that the system engineer and Connectivity Point were the consultants for the network increases that were happening at the GCA. So to ensure, because they are our people that have been doing all these upgrades, and these numbers came in higher when we went to the single mode fiber versus a multi-mode, and that's why the switch costs went up higher. And so I would say I'm very confident that this would be the number.
Are they drilling the holes and doing this and doing the wiring and all that other stuff?
Connectivity point is the one. If I had a green light to go ahead today, it would be connectivity point, and that's who system engineer uses, connectivity point. So if we did 2 separate RFPs, one for doing fiber and one for doing the switches, and say system engineer won the bid, they would reach out to connectivity point to do that wiring. And Dennis Massey is the rep that we use. He's actually a Greeley grad.
So these are the same people that installed the security system. Is that correct?
No, that was all Minuteman. It's called Minuteman today, and it's not. Now, there is one cost that we didn't put in this, is that the security cameras will be able to run as they are right now. If you wanted a higher bandwidth for the security cameras, you'd be running another $40,000 to upgrade the Minuteman switches that they've sold us.
So are you going to be the SAD 51 person that's going to supervise this on the ground?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've worked closely with the system engineers and connectivity point to make sure that it's going in the right places, pulling the right wires, hooking it up, putting it live.
And I assume on any change orders or anything coming up that that would be consulted with Scott. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Peter. Jennifer, do you want to hop in next?
Dirk, thank you for clarifying more of how it will look like on the teacher end. What is your thought on students and what type of broadband that's out there? So if you have a household that has 2 or 3 or 4 students all working on live streaming at the same time, do you think that's going to be will be able to happen all at the same time? Or do you think that it will in some households and not in others?
I think you're going to see some households. Well, I'll start from the bottom end. We've already received 21 hotspots from the state based on the needs that we saw to provide a hotspot for students or staff to give them the connectivity capabilities at home. Now, I know that there's a teacher with 3 kids, all in our district. We gave them 2 hotspots. That seems to handle it. Now, so we have that capability. I know personally in our home, we've got 3 college kids and 2 adults, myself and then another educator, and I had to bump my bandwidth up with Spectrum from what is their basic to a little higher. But then again, I always walk around with about 50 tabs open, and it's management and digital citizenship of how to work through that. And yes, I think you will see some situations that Spectrum, we had Spectrum go down, not here on the campus, but in town, and all of a sudden people aren't getting any connectivity.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Kevin, go ahead. Kevin, you raised your hand.
I was stretching. Thank you. Hi, Dirk. Thanks for your work on this. One of the questions that's come up, and not just by board members who haven't been able to join us yet tonight, but other members of the community, talk about ongoing costs. With these upgrades to the network, with these additional hardware costs, do you anticipate an increase in what it takes to maintain these year over year?
The only thing is the MSLN yearly upgrade, and that's very small. It's less than some small software that we might use in like modern language or something. The firewall upgrade, I built into that a 5-year license versus the 1 year because there was a huge cost saving to do it that way, so that we wouldn't have that recurring cost for 5 years. And then we're going to have to deal with breakage. We deal with it, you know, a teacher knocks over the tripod and breaks the camera, and we're going to have to replace that. It's no different than what we do with the laptops or the iPads that kids have. Usually we'll build in a little buffer surplus for those instances where we have to get them another piece of equipment right away.
So current on-staff support that you have should be able to take care of any needs that may come up because of this?
We're stretched, but I think we can. I mean, it's not a really hard, I think there should be probably some PD time for people, and I think there are people at the high school that are planning to do PD with just the current equipment that we have. So starting in day one, the high school is going to try to do about, I think it's about 5% or of the teachers doing basically what you see here, but instead of the PTZ camera, it's going to be one of our repurposed mini iPads using that camera as the fixed camera. It wouldn't have the capability of zooming, but if you had somebody in the class, they could move the camera, move the iPad from the teacher to, say, the whiteboard.
Okay.
Now the teacher, I didn't share my screen. I didn't do the presentation like Jeff was doing, but that's also the capability of the live stream they were doing in the spring. They were sharing the presentations that they had on just right from their laptop and using the camera in their existing laptop.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
answer
you for that.
the question?
Yeah, and I think any of the additional questions, I'm going to yield back in a second, but for Mr. Hoffman or Mr. Bielcock on the phone today, if they're able to talk about that professional development, the way that their people will use the systems effectively, I think is someplace where we can go before we wrap this discussion. But thank you, Dirk.
And we will support, I've called it a beta because we don't know where that wall is. Before we do any fiber work, we don't know where we might hit the wall of bandwidth. So to say everybody go out and live stream from every single classroom could be disastrous. So that's why we want to roll this up and keep on bringing teachers and the PD to get them comfortable to move into this realm using the video conferencing equipment that we have, and hopefully we can upgrade it to what we're proposing tonight.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot?
Good evening, everyone. Dirk, I haven't been part of the earlier conversations, so my question is probably known by some people, but will, when you say portable kits, does that mean every single 6th grade teacher, 6th through 12th grade teacher has one of these sets?
Yes.
Including allied arts and like everybody that does anything?
Yeah, so basically I took the number of rooms that I got from all the principals, what we would need to outfit every single room that has teaching space, but we would build in a few extras, not only for spares, but also people that co-teach in one room or use one room, but there's different teachers. So yes, we have definitely the ability to expand maybe even a little bit further based on the end result through the RFP.
Yeah. So how many is that? How many sets is that?
Right now, it's looking at, I think we're at 141. Let me see here.
It can be an estimate. That's fine. I'm just curious.
$171.
And is it possible that if another teacher would each teacher be assigned their own, just like a laptop, that would their camera, their responsibility?
Yeah, so I really pushed on the snow day belief that if we think there's going to be a snow day, this should be an easy take-home setup that's in the case So we're in green, and it's going to be a snow day or potential, depending on if Vance is going to call it or not. But if Jeff calls a snow day or says potential's high, they would take a monitor and their case home with them. So the next morning, if it gets called as a snow day, they just set this equipment up. Now, they might have a monitor already at home, and they might not have to carry this one in with them. But that's where they can actually see all the students on one large screen, as well as working on their laptop. But yes, every single teacher would have the, hey, go into snow day mode and get your equipment. And I'm sure in the tech department, we're going to get calls, oh, I don't know where Miss is, or that dongle, or so.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mike Williams or Mike Simmons, do either of you have any sort of questions before we kind of loop back to others?
My questions have been asked.
Same.
Okay, great. Peter, I'll get back to you in a second. I just wanted to ask a little bit more, and I think Kevin had already touched on kind of the professional development time. I'm also curious because Dirk, you mentioned digital citizenship, which has always been something that has been a focus in strategic planning and things like that. And I'm curious how that's being handled with all of this, because I'm trying to imagine myself as a teacher live streaming a classroom and how to manage that, and how are you communicating both with staff and also students this new world that you're teaching in.
Well, just last week, we had the Technology Leadership Committee of all 25 members working remotely. We started with a general conversation about what is video conferencing and what are the guidelines that we need. So put the overlap of digital citizenship, what are the pieces, and how do you act and how do you not act in a video conferencing, not only from a staff standpoint, but from a student standpoint. Then all 4 schools broke out and have been working on the video conferencing guidelines that they're going to share with their staff when they come back in the 5 days of PD. So regardless if we're red, yellow, snow day, those will be the guidelines to help staff keep students what the protocols are, and like things like no pets, no eating, think about your background, get a nice light, all these types of things that are going to make a better enhanced experience for live streaming. So that's the goal, is to get these kids and keep them engaged, and also making sure they understand you do not need to have pictures of certain things or tapestries or this in your background. You're at school when we're doing live streaming. So we'll probably have to deal with some of it, just because we always deal with something, but they are working on those kind of guidelines that will help steer. And also by going beta will help us say, okay, we're going to iron this out, because hybrid is something new to all education. It's either you are 100% remote or you were everybody in the classroom. To do this 50-50 is going to be a challenge. It's not been done in education. So there will be some bumps and some adjustments along the way.
Okay. My other question, I just wanted to confirm that this service, and I'm getting confused by live streaming and video conferencing. Are we using different terms?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up. Live streaming is the platform. We're using Google Meet today. That's the platform to deliver the video. Video conferencing equipment is what we're using to show our faces, use the mics, and produce the show or produce the program. It's on Google Meet. So live streaming is already happening. We own it. We're doing it. We just want to get it to a more engaging production and viable for really continuing to learn and push learning versus making it really kind of, oh, just check in.
Okay. I had 2 other questions. One of them was confirming that this service or video conferencing or live streaming will not be offered to those that are remote students 6 through 12. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's my understanding, that it's not, it would be too difficult to try to balance this. It could change if it gets to the point where the staff is comfortable with juggling that many balls in the air. But today, I highly discourage that kind of.
And actually, we have Susie Robbins, Tyler, here that could jump in a little bit more on the curriculum end of that too.
Sure, that's great. Thank you, Jeff.
So I will just echo what Dirk said, that at this point, there is no plan for using live streaming for remote school. So we have some other online platforms that we're going to use and hopefully support parents as they support their children through that, but no live streaming.
Okay. And then, oh, my last question, and maybe this is more for Chris and Mari, is really just how to pretend it's not a COVID year. Imagine that. And how are we utilizing this equipment and these services to prolong this investment and to really feel like this is an investment that works for our district for years to come, like a decade, like you said, Dirk. And Dirk, please chime into that as well. But
I mean, I would start is that the snow day situation, it's already been working towards that before we got into COVID. It's like, how many days can we save by being able to do live streaming? This is going to be the equipment that brings a class at where they're at versus having to say, oh, well, it's really a wash day. This is a regular teaching day, and it counts as a teaching day, and we're not going to have to be adding days at the end of the year. So I think from that standpoint, we also have situations at times where kids might be hospitalized or can't, and we might make accommodations that says the teacher can record using this equipment and actually build content and have this for credit recovery and also for RTI and review. Kids could go back and watch the videos of what they are going to be tested on. Like, hey, I was out that day. Well, now there's a video of that day, and they could go back and watch it. So from a credit recovery, I think it's very strong.
And are we sure that the state will recognize these virtual learning days as replacement of in-person learning days, so we don't have to make up in the summer?
Yeah, the state is already recognized. They actually passed a state law 2 years ago now that recognizes virtual days or what they call snowbag days or anything that you do at home, as long as it's done with fidelity, can count as a school day now in lieu of snow days. And it was a couple years ago when we had like 8 snow days on the books. I think the county had 10 or 12. So the state has already recognized that we're allowed to do anything. I think COVID has also just created a lot of flexibility about what do we call learning and how do we make that work.
Okay.
I think Chris and Mari, I don't know if you had anything to jump in, either one of you, on anything to add to what Dirk said about about that as well.
Sure, I would be happy to. I mean, I think I could add a bunch of things potentially, but just on this specific point about, what is the value of this investment over time? I think I would go a little bit beyond what Dirk was suggesting in terms of the creation of videos within classrooms to say that students are absent with any number of small illnesses all the time. And I hope I'm not editorializing too much here in saying that I think one of the lessons of COVID that we might be forced to learn is that it's okay to stay home when you're sick, and we should be encouraging students to promote their health. But if you're well enough to tune in to follow along to the things that are happening in your classroom, that's something that we could continue to do right away with this technology. I think there are possibilities that are well beyond that in terms of the ways that we could use this. in the future, including through, I mean, I think it creates the potential for uses within the building where, you know, a presentation happening in X place can be viewed by students in another location in the school. You know, you have multiples of those things happening at the same time. I haven't spoken with Dirk about some of these futuristic possibilities at all, but certainly there's potential for students to use this equipment as a part of what they're doing in a class as well, for a small group project, for creation of video, those sorts of things. So I think there certainly is potential. I'll admit that those are not the things that I've had in mind since the spring when I've been talking about wanting the ability to do this. It's really the ability to connect with students who are at home. That's my foremost interest in this technology.
I'll just say that Chris said it well. And I would just really piggyback on the idea of, you know, occasionally we have students who are out for longer periods of time. I agree that a student who's out, you know, for a day or two could probably log into the class and be present at a distance. But I have even a greater concern for kids who are ill for a longer period of time and cannot come to school. And the longer they're out, the harder it seems it is to get back. And those are the kids that I worry about. And this would afford them a way in an ongoing manner, talking outside of a COVID world. It would be an opportunity for kids who are sick to stay connected for the longer term. And I think we would see a real benefit from that, of not losing kids along the way.
Thank you both. One thing that just kept coming back to me while you were saying both of those things about not losing kids that are out due to health reasons or whatever, we have a group of those and they're remote learners right now. And so I'm nervous that if we're presenting this as this is a long term, and I totally get that this is super complex and that there's 800 schedules that we're trying to balance as well as different curriculums. But if we're saying that the value, long-term value of this is so we can reach kids that are out for a long time, we have over 100 students that are out for, let's say, the whole year now that have a variety of reasons. So I just think we should be thoughtful of that communication, because if that is one of the values, then maybe we should talk about that for remote learners as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is timing. So in starting students for, you know, what could be a trimester at this point, you know, in terms of timing, it would be very challenging to start students in a remote school situation and then to move them into that. I mean, I think it's certainly for discussion depending on where we're at in November. But at least right now we're saying, you know, because of the timing, that is the biggest reason, and the ability for our teachers to be trained to do this. We have not trained our teachers to do this for, you know, 2 students here or 3 students there, and how to make that work. We're just not at that place yet. Doesn't mean we won't be down the road. I also wonder, and I'm just kind of speaking on a turn a little bit, and I think this is something maybe the curriculum committee can chew on this year as part of their agenda, but is, you know, is it time for us in our district to consider a small remote school by choice option going forward? You know, and I think it would have to be carefully considered. I think it would have to be very thoughtful. I think it would have to be capped. But is it an option that for some of our students it might be a better option for some students, or at least partial? And I think that there are students that might be more successful with that. You know, I'm just thinking along those lines. Is that something that we would want to offer? And it would certainly open up some possibilities for that to happen on a broader scale. So I think those are things that, you know, we do contend with. During the winter months, you know, we can drop 8 to 10% in enrollment just from the flu on any given day during the winter. I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility of severe winter weather and the flu going around.
Chris and Maurice, I think you guys wanted to comment on that, unless I'm out of turn in the comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would mostly just echo what Jeff just said. I would say if we had this capacity today, then I think I would feel comfortable including students right away in a remote school, even without some of the staff training that I think will be really valuable and important. I think those students would be sort of the guinea pigs, if you will, because we'd never done it before. But if we had this capacity today, then I would be comfortable. We don't have this full capacity today. We have the capacity to hook up some students to hook up some teachers with some suboptimal equipment to attempt to, establish the connection with students at home and to, begin to understand the way to operate a classroom in this dual modality, both in person and at home. And I think that's going to be really valuable and important, but we'll be doing that with a limited scope of courses that couldn't possibly fill the diversity of schedules that our remote learners have requested. And so I just don't think it's not possible to do right away. I understand the optics of what you're saying, Tyler. I just don't think it's possible to do it for those learners right away.
Yeah, and I think that's why, having these explanations are super helpful so that we all can be on the same page. Thank you. Murray, do you want to add anything or?
I have a
I
comment.
think Chris summarized it really well.
Go ahead, Peter, and then we'll go to Kevin and then Michael Williams.
This one question would be to Dirk and Scott. I know in the last round of budget reductions before we approved it, there was a lot of IT stuff that didn't make the final cut. And my suspicion is there's probably other IT stuff that you're thinking about for next year's budget. Is there any way we can dress that stuff up in a good enough costume to pass state COVID guidelines?
Well, one of the things I actually forgot to put it on the slide here, but in that number of the 900 is the upgrade of the 6/8 projectors from carts to short throw projectors, which would be
But is
necessary.
there anything else that you can?
I think MIW is getting close to needing an upgrade of their projectors that have been in place for 5 years plus. So,
can we dress that one up, Scott?
It's a loaded question, Peter.
I know what most of mine are.
I certainly wouldn't want to mislead anybody on the COVID funds in Augusta. So I think that the network upgrade, Peter, I'm just going to answer you directly. The upgrade to the network is something we've been procrastinating for quite some time. And that's actually going to be the biggest bang for our buck right now. Because we've had a number of issues around that. Devices, we've done a lot of upgrades to devices. We could buy more devices if we wanted to, but I think what Dirk is proposing for the network upgrade is really where the money ought to be spent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
one thing I will say about the timing, by going to the portable setups versus the fixed and installation, you're cutting out a lot of time it would take to install all those fixed. And even if the RFP was already approved and we could buy, it doesn't mean that they're shipping today. The backlog, and they're making them as fast as they can. We're not the only district and not the only state that's buying this kind of technology for their classrooms. So we're going to get in a waiting line with a lot of other people. And the longer we wait, the longer it's going to take to get these in place.
Yeah, we need to get going on the RFP very quickly because these funds have to be expended by December 31st, which means the items need to be in place and it needs to be up and going December 31st. So, so it's really important that we get moving on it.
Kevin, did you have a question?
I do. Sorry, scribbling furiously. In its moving back to your question, Tyler, talking about remote school. Chris, you weighed in. Mari, I know that you concurred with that, but it's that question that I have about a phased rollout of this. If there's any place that the remote schools could be more connected as this begins to roll out, just so that the transition back into the larger cohort is possible. So, we hear from folks that are in the community that for one reason or another, they are opting for the remote learning. Is there a way that, at least as the technology is being tried out and the staff is being developed, that the remote can be more incorporated so that we can fold them in seamlessly? They're going to miss out on an awful lot by not having true instructor-led learning. It might be the wrong venue, but look, I'd take anything that you want to offer.
So I think the tricky thing about that, Kevin, and it's a really good question, but the tricky thing about that is the timeline for getting the technology up and running. So let me see how I want to put this. Okay, so you have a learning target as a teacher, and your goal is to teach kids the skills and content that they need to go forward with that learning target, whatever it might be. The manner in which you choose to approach that varies on any number of things, the kids you have in front of you, and kind of how they learn best. And in this case, whether you have kids in front of you in person or whether they're in a remote school setting. And so Susie can speak more to what that remote school structure is going to look like. But I can talk to you about what that hybrid model can look like in the middle school. So you have your kids 2 days a week, you're providing direct instruction to them 3 days a week, they're working from home. So my feeling is that whatever we're having them do at home needs to be connected to what they did in class, and that it needs to be tightly connected to the learning goals. So I think the kids in remote school have similar learning goals, but the approach is vastly different. The longer they stay in remote school and kids are in a hybrid world, or the green zone for that matter, the more likely things are to diverge a little bit in terms of not the learning goal, but how it's addressed. And so my worry is that if we pop kids back into that, one, the teachers haven't had the professional learning time to be able to do that fluidly. This is a real new model for people. And I mean, I really think that some lessons, just hybrid wise, are going to lend themselves better. Some types of lessons are going to lend themselves better to having kids at home learning concurrent with kids who are sitting in front of you in the classroom than others would. So just structurally, in terms of lesson planning, it's kind of tricky. I think there are easier times of the year to kind of weave those students back in potentially. And, I'm doing this extemporaneously, so forgive me, but I think one of those times would be at a natural break in a trimester for us at the middle school. It would be easier to have kids start joining into classes at that point because units typically end. Allied arts shift. It's going to be tricky to weave them into certain classes that are ongoing for the whole year, no matter when you do it. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying that I don't want to set kids up for challenges with their learning that don't need to be there. So I don't know if that sort of gets to it.
But here's the thing, my friend. We can sit here as board members, and it's always very easy to us because we're just in these meetings and hearing from people. What you're talking about makes this so much more clear, not just for us, our role, but for parents that have children that are in different roles, whether they're coming in as a hybrid or they're going to be remote. It's not that it's trying to keep people from doing different things, but that those learning targets that you talk about will be different. thinking that the fact that you and your team are thinking about how you bring people back together, I think is absolutely the critical piece that we have to keep talking about, because at a certain point, folks will be coming back together, and you've contemplated those across the entire journey. So yes, it's shockingly helpful, and sorry to put you on the spot for that.
That's okay.
Mike Williams.
So Kevin asked my exact question. So well done, Kevin. I had just a very brief thought, because I really appreciated the answer as emphatically as Kevin appreciates it. One quick follow-up though, I wonder though if it's worth just noting that this is all new, and so we'll be consistently evaluating and reevaluating how this is going. So come November, we may say, in January or February, we may be able to reintegrate. So just leaving that open. And so while I completely agree with you, Mari, that we don't want to promise this, because right now, and I hear you about the divergence of learning, but also noting that we don't want to necessarily say absolutely not for this year. So I wonder if that's also possible. And I see Chris shaking his head.
I shake my head in agreement with you, Mike. Sorry, I do not want to say no. I do not want to say no either. I want what Kevin wants. I want that capacity, and I think, as I said before, I think with a few of my most enthusiastic teachers, I would say they could pick this up if they had the equipment in their hands and run with it right away. Others will need training, and I want what you want, and I'm ready to keep the door open all year long.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I feel like we've gone around. I don't see any more questions in the chat box. Does anyone else have anything for discussion before we take a vote? We really did only talk about one line item of this recommendation. So I just want to remind everyone there is a lot of other items in there if there's any questions related to those. But go ahead, Mike Williams.
Yeah, just a note of appreciation to the Finance Committee and Scott and Jeff and everybody to bumping up the number on outdoor learning. I really think that's going to make a huge difference. I really appreciate you folks doing that. I really appreciate the administrators in participating. We had a really productive discussion this morning with a group of administrators, teachers. Tyler did a great job running that effort. Just start to think about how to integrate outdoor learning into our campus and really get that up and running as soon as possible. So that's really exciting. Glad to see that number's bigger. I think that's going to have a long-term impact for us, and I hope that we can continue to keep that as a priority, not just in the expending of these funds, but if more funds come through and in budgets going forward. So that's all I wanted to say, just as a thank you there.
I feel the same way on all of those points. I'm grateful for the discussions we've had around outdoor learning. And it's very strange to think that we've been talking about it, at least since I've been on the board, and that COVID is the one thing that's brought us to this now. So there's silver linings, So Kevin, you made a good point. For the Mike Simmons, do you mind reading the recommended vote since you were the one that did the so moved? Oh, sorry. Margot, you have another question.
I just had one question to Jeff, I think, about the substitutes and staffing. Are you feeling confident that we're going to have what we need to start and maintain staffing in yellow for the year if we need it?
I wouldn't use the word confident too much, but I'm feeling, let me put it this way, I'm feeling better today than I did a week ago about our staffing. I believe that we have worked through a lot of staffing questions and concerns, and that there are a lot of staff who are returning with us on campus that a week ago we had question marks about, in their information. So a lot of those have been resolved over the last week. So I'm feeling better. At the same time, we've also gotten a couple of staff members who have resigned in the last week. It was kind of a late resignation, so that always presents a challenge for us when that happens. But that actually happens every year. That's nothing necessarily COVID related. We've gotten resignations in a day before school has begun before. That happens typically every year. So we'll work that through with the long-term subs. We are working on that right now. We have a number of our very valued substitutes, daily substitutes, who also will be have expressed interest in being permanent substitutes. And so I think we'll be able to fill most of those 15, or say close to those 15. Even if we don't start, even if we can't fill them by the 8th of September, we'll continue filling them as long as we need to. We have advertised externally as well as internally now. I think that will be helpful to us. But I'm feeling more confident today than I was a week ago to answer that question.
And related to that, and also going back to what Mario was saying about how differently teachers are going to be teaching this year, and will substitutes or long-term subs be part of Wednesday planning so they can understand how things are going to be, or are they just a drop into a class and hopefully the teacher is not sick for longer than they've planned? Or
yeah, it depends on the situation. So some of our long-term subs will be assigned to a part of a cohort. So for example, if a teacher is out on Thursdays and Fridays for childcare reasons and they've qualified for that, and they'll be out Thursday and Friday for that particular cohort B for the duration, a long-term substitute would conceivably be assigned, and that's the part we're working on right now, to that cohort B for that teacher, as long as is necessary. So that's our plan. Some of our long-term substitutes will literally be moved around like almost on a daily substitute basis. So we have a need today, we need that person over there. So we're hoping to have a little bit of both. So there'll be some people that will be substituting. We also might have some ed techs that are certified to teach, and it might be good for them, good for us to move them into a cohort for 2 days a week, and those are their 2 days, and use a substitute in a different way to fill their position, for example. And those are the things that we haven't completely ironed out yet. I think what's making me feel more confident is the number of people that are able now to return to work that we had questions about from a week ago. That number has gone down a lot from the people that we were wondering if they were coming back or not for childcare reasons or medical reasons or whatever. So not saying it's perfect, and certainly we definitely have vacancies we've got to work on, but it's day by day it seems to be a little bit better than it was the day before.
great, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to do one last call for any questions or discussion. Seeing none, Mike Simmons, because you did this, the motion, do you mind reading the recommended vote?
Sure. I move that the board approves the district's application for CARES funds in the amount of $1,448,743.66 as recommended by the Finance Committee. Furthermore, the allocation of said funds is the recommendation of the Finance Committee, assuming approval by the state.
Thank you. I don't remember who did the second, but that has been done.
I did, Tyler.
Okay, thank you. So Jennifer did our second, and then I will do a vote. Tyler McGinley, yes. Mike Simmons?
Yes.
Jennifer Stewart?
Yes.
Mike Williams?
Yes.
And Elias, are you here? You joined late, but I don't believe you're still here. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Les, I just need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, Peter Bingham.
And the second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, last roll call. Peter Bingham.
Yes.
Kevin Desmond.
Yes.
Margot Harrington.
Yes.
Tyler McGinley, yes. Mike Simmons.
Yes.
Jennifer Stewart.
Yes.
And Mike Williams.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all so very much for being here.